Okay, today we're going to convert this 1952 Chevrolet pickup truck to disc brakes in front. Probably one of the best spent money that you can do on any of these old vintage trucks is to convert them to disc brakes. Obviously, with today's higher speeds and the capabilities that you have with overdrive transmissions and whatnot, you want to be able to bring these things to a halt, and these old drum brakes are just not going to do it. So, picked up a set that I have purchased before. I have another 53 that is basically the same truck, and pretty simple stuff, really. When I put the disc brake system on that one, it really surprised me. I thought that it would be still sacrificing some of the stopping capabilities and not be quite as efficient as today's newer cars. And I'm going to tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. So, first thing, obviously, you're going to have to pull off this old system, take off that castle nut and that cotter pin, caps, whatnot. These old bearings, don't worry about it. These are going to come out of there because you're going to go with a newer bearing system. These old beasts are not worth the saving. Yeah, as you can see, that's old school stuff. This 1952 technology here. So. Some of these old drums can kind of make you work for it, I'll tell you. All it's doing right now is it's caught up on the old brake shoes. The drum doesn't want to release. This truck we picked up not too far from here, but it had been sitting for a very, very long time, and I suspect that it was sitting in water for quite a while too, because when I took the engine out of it and I was draining the oil, it was full of water. So that would lead me to believe that she's been sitting in water for a long time. We had some floods a few years back, but again, in these old beasts, there's not a whole lot that you can't redo anyway, so it's not the end of the world. The only thing you'll be dealing with, though, is a little bit of some rust issues, of course. But nowadays, the rust on some of these rat rods is kind of cool. So anyway, let me see if we can't get something to break those loose. And there we go. All right, and there's the old bearing set in there as well. Nothing too impressive. Okay. For the most part, this can be done with pretty simple tools, nothing crazy. You see, everything I've done so far has just been pretty minor stuff. All of the old brake shoe stuff comes off of there. These little springs. Just be real careful with these springs. I do have a drum brake spring tool, but honestly, a lot of times I just prefer to knock it out with a pair of vice grips. This whole system comes out of here. Gotta love YouTube though, right? They can fix, or they can show you how to do just about anything, right? All right. One thing I did get ahead of is I cut the brake line already out because I'm going to put all new brake lines in this thing. So I got rid of all the brake lines, brake hoses. They were in my way anyway when I was working on the framework to get this small block Chevy in here. If you can believe it, somebody put a Pontiac motor in this. I had nothing against Pontiac, but it's a Chevrolet pickup. Come on. So, all right, so the next step, of course, is to pull this whole backing off of here. I'm gonna try to move this camera around so you can see the back of it. Okay. All right, so we've got 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. You can see this one, there's another one right here. And if this is the first time you've taken this apart, it is going to be a challenge because if they've been sitting a while, they can be, wow, that was surprisingly easy. But usually they get pretty seized on there. Right. I'm gonna have to hold that on that side. All right, to speed this up, I loosened up this bearing piece here. You may have to tap on it with a chisel to get it away, just something to kind of pull it away from the spindle a little bit, but it'll come off of there. You're not gonna need that because you're gonna put in a whole new one. But just put that in the pile. Clean off all that old grease. It's probably contaminated with all kinds of stuff anyway. So you may have to, depending on how bad it is, some of them you may have to run a little bit of fine sandpaper or steel wool or something to clean them off so that you can accept the new bushing that's going on there. You can see on this one, this is going to be a little tight, so probably have to clean that up a little bit and get that to sit on there correctly. Okay, so we got the spindle all cleaned up, and like I said, I knew I was gonna have to sand that out a little bit. We're gonna take this spacer and we're gonna wind up putting it on there, and it should, the key on here is it needs to bury itself all the way to the back like that. When you go to first put these on, and it happened on the other ones I've done as well, is it doesn't want to sit all the way back, so you're gonna have to clean up either the bushing itself or the spindle in order to get it to seat right. Once you have that done, the bracket adapter, caliper on these goes to the back. So it comes with all the hardware and everything that you need for this one. There is a spacer that winds up going in here. You'll have the two smaller diameter bolts gonna go through there. We'll have our bushings come in through here all the way through, and then on this one you have two of the larger diameter bolts. One is longer than the other. The longer one is going to go towards the rear, that goes through the bracket, and it also goes through the last of the bushings that you'll have for that setup. Okay, and then washers are going on the outside. Do make sure that the nuts, go on the back side of the spindle and not towards the front. You'd probably figure out why if you did it the wrong way, because whatever's left over of the bolt is going to go right into the right into your rotor. So obviously that's not going to be good. Okay, that's one. Okay, and then the shorter of the larger diameter bolts is going to go right there on the front and tie up the rest of your steering system. All right, so it should look like that, and I'll go ahead and tighten this up. All right, so we got the caliper bracket all bolted up, and of course we got the bushing on there. Next part is going to be the rotor itself. The rotor comes pretty clean. Obviously it's nice looking, no major issues. I haven't run into any of them that had any real bad imperfections or anything like that, but you want to check and make sure that you have all the right collars and all the right bushings in there, and you can do a test fit before you grease it up. It comes with the bearings, new bearings, and again, test fit the bearings, make sure they sit on there. You can see that one's going to sit on there just right, and then of course that's going to wind up falling into your rotor like so, and then you have the seal that's going to go on the back of that once you get it all greased up. So I think the next step is going to be to go ahead and get this full of grease and ready for install. Okay, so the messiest of the work is done. Always love packing some bearings with grease, but I've got it packed in there, and I did put the seal on. I put a little bit of extra grease on our spindle. I'll put it in place here. Tell right away it goes in. Now, next part is going to be taking the other bearing that comes with the kit, which I have already got all nice and greased up. We're gonna put just you don't want to put just a little bit of extra grease in there on that collar. This is a messy job, this portion of it, when you're dealing with the grease. And I want to tell you something, it will be to your benefit after you finish with the grease. Keep an old dirty rag, some old t-shirt, something like that. But after you finish with the grease and you start putting this thing really all together, start wrapping it up, do a thorough cleaning, because you don't want grease anywhere on the surface of this. They put oil on here so that they don't flash rust anyway from the factory. So it's a good idea to go ahead and wipe it down with a solvent. You know, lacquer thinner, even paint thinner will do that if you don't have anything else. But you really want to be able to take any oils or any trash off of there. One of the things that you are going to have to do is you're going to have to reuse the specific washer that came with your original drum set. Okay, so I've got that piece in there, and this next bushing also comes with the kit, and that's going to sit right there on the end of that spindle, and then we're going to reuse our castle nut. I have to admit, I was wondering what in the world that was for when putting these together before, but it is so that the castle nut and the hole for the cotter pin line up properly. Okay, so setting these bearings, we're going to tighten up kind of snug, just enough where it starts to tighten up the bearings. You don't want to crush it or anything like that. And then back it out a little bit. I like to do it a couple times, just kind of make sure I've got the bearings seated nice, because you don't want to have any of that stuff coming loose once you're on the road. All right, so now we've got it seated, and I've backed it out to by the next good slot, you know, comfortably. Nothing ridiculously loose by any means. It's still going to be pretty tight. Put a new cotter pin in there. I don't think a cotter pin comes in the kit. I've always got a box of those. You can buy those as cheap as you want from Harbor Freight. But remember to clean all this up after the fact. Okay, so we got that in there, and then we're going to put our cap on, and then we'll start working on our caliper. Okay, so now we're at the most important part, the caliper itself, right? Okay, first thing we need to do is get the pads ready. We've got an inside pad and an outside pad. Which is which? Well, by trial and error you can figure it out, but I'm going to save you a little bit of time. The inside one has a spot for the spring to go on, so you will clip that spring on the back of the pad, and it's going to go in just like that. Okay, and then your other pad is going to have this lip on the outside, if you can see that in the camera, and that's going to fit right inside of the lip on the caliper. Okay, once that's in, we're ready to put our bolts in there. Flip this around. Do make sure there is a left and a right side caliper. Make sure you look at the box. They're usually labeled on there. In fact, on this one you can see it. It's right there. It's got an L in there. So, other thing that's a little tricky is these have a little bushing in there that you will not need in this particular application. So you can push that bushing out on both sides, because this bolt actually takes care of that. second one. Gotta be careful, those little rubber bushings on the inside, or they can pop out of there. We don't want that to happen. May not be a bad idea to put a little bit of grease on those so they slide through there a little easier. I'm gonna pull this one back out. Put just a little bit of grease on the very end. You can see inside there. I know it's kind of hard to see, but there's a little rubber bushing that sits inside there. Just want to make sure that it slides on there properly, otherwise you'll have a sticky brake situation. There we go. Now, until you get brake pressure on these, the brake pads will be a little loose on there, so don't panic. But essentially, we're just about wrapped up. The rest of it is adding the line or the hose going up front, which if you're this deep into doing this kind of a job, you should be able to put a brake hose on. It's the brake hose. Make sure you use the little crusher washer to seal it properly, and then you hook it up to the brake lines. Like I said, in this one, I'm still needing to put on a whole new brake caliper, or excuse me, a master cylinder. And the master cylinder that I like to use is the Corvette style. I do on these trucks, I like to place it still back in the original location up underneath the seat, and I do use I make a little door in the floor pan so that I can get to it and just put carpet over it, and then it goes under your floor mat and nobody knows the difference anyway. All right, so there we go. All right, rotating. Like I said, the other thing I want to make sure that you do is you get all of this cleaned up. Wipe it down with some solvent. If you want to paint the brake calipers, same thing. Clean those up real well. Get the grease off of there and paint them. If you don't, you're just going to clean them up and make sure that that they stay oiled so that they don't flash rust on you. All this stuff is going to flash rust if you're driving it outside. If it's a show vehicle, then you're going to want to keep it clean. If it's a driver, then it's a driver. You're going to have some flash rust just like your normal day-to-day driver. I say that, and I actually drive a day-to-day. I drive a 66 Chevrolet pickup truck. So that's essentially the setup. I'll show you. So that's the setup. Get in there a little bit so you can see where those bushings went. Between there, see where that brake hose is going to be hooked up, and then that's your bleeder, of course. That's really about it. Not a bad job, and the stopping power is beyond measurable, and you will love it. If you have any questions, drop me a line. Good luck.